The tomb of Christ. Millions of Christians revere this shrine as the final earthly resting place of Jesus.
This is sort of X marks the spot.
The epicenter of Christianity for almost 2,000 years.
You tread where Jesus trod. You see where Jesus died and was buried, and the tomb from which he rose. And the impression it makes upon one is unforgettable.
Ultimately, it is the place where Christianity starts.
But now this most sacred of sacred sites is in danger. The marble edifice over the tomb could collapse at any moment.
You could see that it had started to buckle.
There was a fear the pilgrims might have been endangered.
To save it, science and faith must work together. And for the first time in living history, open the tomb, revealing secrets hidden since the days of Jesus himself. Secrets now shared with the world by a team of National Geographic experts. What science uncovers could confirm the dearly held belief of Christians all over the world, or shatter those beliefs forever. Is this truly the tomb of Christ? In this holiest of cities, Jerusalem, in its holiest church, lies what many believe to be the tomb of Jesus Christ.
The claim of Christianity is that a historical drama transpired. It's about a man who was murdered, who rose from the dead, and that means that there's a place, okay? There's a time and place that we can pinpoint where that happened.
You tread where Jesus trod. You see where Jesus died and was buried, and the tomb from which he rose. And the impression it makes upon one is unforgettable.
For almost 2,000 years, pilgrims have flocked to Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Millions of Christians drawn by faith to worship before this one stone slab. Underneath here is what is believed to be the holy bed, the limestone rock shelf in which the crucified body of Jesus lay until his resurrection from the dead. The holy bed is protected by a marble edifice built above it. It's known as the edicule. This place is so sacred that 3 separate Christian groups control it between them. Each faction so passionate about their own beliefs that they rarely agree about anything. And minor disagreements can escalate into violence. This brawl between monks erupted when those from one denomination got in the way of another group's procession to the tomb. An ancient agreement known as the status quo tries to keep the peace. Under its terms, nothing can be done here unless every faction agrees. Outside the church, a builder's ladder stands against a window. It's been here since at least the year 1785. Over hundreds of years, the different Christian groups have never been able to agree to move it. It has become a symbol of how centuries of disagreement have meant centuries of neglect. And now, the tomb is at crisis point. The marble shelter over the tomb, the edicule, is in danger of falling down. The very structure built to protect the holy tomb of Christ could now collapse and destroy it. It's not the first time that the edicule has needed restoration. It's been destroyed and rebuilt many times.
The building was originally made of wood, which isn't really great if you've got hundreds and thousands of pilgrims with candles. It's burned down about 5 times.
The current edicule is made of stronger stuff, solid marble. But it's 200 years old, and years of neglect have taken their toll. For decades, the structure has had to be held up by a disfiguring web of steel bars built around it as a supporting cage.
When I first saw the Edicule, I thought, how can this be the most sacred site of Christianity? It looked like kind of an old train station with goop dripping down, and the building itself clad in marble. You could see that it had started to buckle. It upset me as someone who's looking at it and I'm saying, this isn't going to last.
Since the day it was built, the structure has been under assault from millions of pilgrim visitors and the smoke and heat from countless holy candles. Now it is critically weakened. If the Edicule were to collapse, it could kill or injure anyone inside. Local police warn they might close the tomb. Time is fast running out for repairs to be made. The threat of imminent disaster makes it imperative to change the attitudes of ages. The patriarchs must come together as one to open up to science and to modern technology. That technology comes from Athens, from a team of scientists with a trusted reputation for restoring monuments, including the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul.
As you know, the cultural heritage of Greece is contributing to the world heritage. And we are proud of having developed the know-how and innovation to diagnose, to plan, and to protect cultural heritage.
On arrival in Jerusalem, Professor Moropoulou realizes she needs more than just technical skills. It will take limitless patience and diplomacy to make the various leaders agree on a plan. Her task is all the more challenging in a church that's been an unquestioning patriarchy for millennia.
There were a lot of very set minds at first, a lot of very somber faces of people who didn't want to budge, sort of like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that way, or it's not going to happen that way. But I think the scientific intensity of Professor Antonio Moropoulou was like, okay, step by step, we'll do it.
Professor Moropoulou knows that only the fear of the Edicule collapsing will make the patriarchs unanimously agree to the next step, giving the final go-ahead for her ambitious restoration plans. She rams home unpalatable facts over and over again.
So the columns were deviating from the vertical. This deviation was critical. There was a fear that the pilgrims might have been endangered during the pilgrimage.
Moropoulou needs details of the structural weaknesses within the shelter over the tomb. And for that, the team must look deep into its walls.
This is a ground-penetrating radar, and it's a system that actually can see through a structure, for example, through a wall. It's like when you go to the doctor and you see the baby inside the body, it's like an ultrasonic scan. And in this case, we used it to see through the Holy Edicule, and we wanted to identify the structural layers from the exterior to the interior.
With 3D scanning, the team measure precise distances between the scanner and the object they're examining.
We used the handheld laser scanner to document all the stones that were removed from the Holy Edicule. We did 255 scans of the stones.
The minimum destructive has to be the way to approach a monument, and that's why we worked in a way that we were capable to have maximum informations with a minimum penetration.
But even modern non-destructive tests cannot reveal every hidden defect. In their Athens laboratories, others in the team analyze physical samples brought back from the Jerusalem church.
We're working on samples from the Holy Edicule. It's very interesting because through the mortars you can see one material embedded in the other. You can see almost how the Edicule grew.
The Athens results reveal far more extensive damage than anyone had feared. Stonework weakened by water, cavities in the walls and foundations, mortar that is crumbling to dust. Faced with the sheer scale of the restoration that's needed, the church leaders finally agree. The work must start at once. But their agreement comes at a price. They impose an immovable deadline, dictated by the most important date in the church's calendar. Each Easter, priests enter the Holy Tomb and emerge with flaming torches. They claim that the flames spontaneously ignite from the holy bed of Christ. The miracle flames pass from person to person around the church. The patriarchs demand that nothing can interrupt this service. The restoration must be completed before the ceremony of the Holy Fire. And Easter is only 9 months away. With no time to waste, scientists start working where no scientists have worked before, inside the tomb itself. Their task is simply to repair a failing building, but doing that involves exploring its structure and the deep secrets of its past. It raises the possibility of finding evidence which could prove that this is the tomb of Christ, or that the beliefs of 2 billion Christians might be mistaken. The Edicule, the marble structure built to protect what many believe is the tomb of Christ, is being restored. The project requires scientists to study the tomb as it has never been studied before, which means that science might also answer the biggest question of all. Is this really the tomb of Christ? The claim that this is the tomb of Jesus stretches back almost 2,000 years into history. The Gospels describe Christ's crucifixion and death, but give few details about his final resting place. The Gospel of St. Matthew. So Joseph took down the body, wrapped it in linen, and placed it in a tomb hewn out of the rock. First-century tombs hewn out of the rock do still exist in Jerusalem.
This, in fact, is what the tomb of Jesus would have looked like. What I'm on right now is a bench, and people would have come through this door and gone through to the standing pit and dealt with the bones, the skeleton, the body would be left here on the bench. And there are little niches where people would put bones after the body had been completely decomposed.
Tombs like this show what Jesus' burial place would have looked like. What's less certain is where he was buried. The Bible tells us it was near the site of crucifixion, at a place called Golgotha, outside the walls of the city. Professor Taylor believes that was right here.
In first century Jerusalem, this was the street going to Jaffa, outside the city. And I would have just gone through a gate behind me called Ganath Gate. It would have led out, and this is where Jesus would have been led out to be crucified, in fact. On the right-hand side of me is the area of Golgotha. It was huge, a huge area of quarry, and right beside that, in between the quarry and the roadway, was where the Romans had their execution place. So the Romans liked to execute people in public, and this was a public thoroughfare.
The quarry by the side of that ancient thoroughfare changed a lot in the century following Christ's death. For many Christians, This was a time of intense persecution.
Romans thought of Christians as being magicians and cannibals and indulging in any kind of terrible thing you can think of, and yet Christians were attracting larger and larger numbers of people. In the middle of the 2nd century, the Emperor Hadrian, he had a chance to do something that would really deal a very, very heavy blow to Christians in completely obliterating the site that they claimed was where the resurrection took place. He leveled it all off. That area then became a temple of Venus.
Less than 200 years later, a historian claimed that Hadrian was trying to bury all traces of Jesus.
Eusebius in the 4th century, writing in Greek, says, "And they built a gloomy sanctuary to the impure demon of Venus to bury the Saviour's cave under such foul pollutions." So this is a tremendously important passage because it shows that the Romans wanted to deliberately bury the tomb of Christ and deal a terrible blow to Christianity.
The tomb was buried, but soon afterwards, just 300 years after the crucifixion, everything changed. The then Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity. With all the zeal of a convert, this first Christian emperor of Rome searched for the place where Jesus died and found it.
I used to be very skeptical. I just thought it was so very convenient for Constantine to create a new edifice just where the Temple of Venus was.
It could be that Constantine simply picked the temple site without really knowing if it was connected to Jesus. But Professor Taylor thinks that's unlikely. She believes that the shared cultural memory of the persecuted Christian community showed Constantine where he could find the buried tomb.
But the interesting thing is, as I've grown older, I'm more accepting of tradition being passed on by older people and memory continuing on.
Taylor thinks that Christian parents would have told their children and their children's children, ensuring that the whereabouts of Jesus' burial place would have cascaded down through the generations.
And I think that those Christians in Jerusalem would have seen the Temple of Venus being built, seen the tomb being buried, and thought, okay, it's still down there.
If Professor Taylor is right, it was those anecdotal stories from the local Christian population that inspired Constantine to demolish the Temple of Venus and dig underneath the ruins. Contemporary records say that he then excavated the entire hillside to leave the burial place exposed. Robin Griffiths-Jones, whose own church in London, England is based on the original Church of the Holy Sepulchre, explains.
He cuts away almost the entire complex. The vestibule goes, the whole hillside goes, all the central chamber goes. So it is now almost unrecognizable. And anyone going there could well think, this doesn't look like a tomb as it would then have been. No, indeed it hasn't, because it has been so drastically cut away, cut down to the simple chamber.
This version of Constantine's excavation of the tomb has been accepted as historical fact for centuries. But now, scientists make an unexpected discovery, a discovery suggesting that the historians got it wrong. Just days into the restoration, the team strips marble wall panels from the edicule. Underneath, scientists expect to see masonry walls supporting the building. Instead, they find solid rock. It's a momentous discovery. What they found are the walls of the original burial cave. Constantine didn't completely destroy it. some of the walls were simply covered up.
We never in our life imagined that would reveal the sides of the original cave that surrounded the tomb. History told us that that tomb had been flattened and opened up to the sky, but the sides of the cave were still there.
Ground-penetrating radar later maps the full extent of the hidden walls. They project upwards on each side of the burial bed. It's confirmation that the holy bed at the heart of the tomb was once inside a rock cave. And it means that for 1,700 years, pilgrims visiting the tomb have been standing inside that burial cave. They just never knew it at the time. Church authorities asked National Geographic to observe and record each stage of the restoration so it could be shared with the world. The National Geographic team, correspondent Tim Samuels and archaeologist Fred Hebert, are among the first to learn the secret of the walls.
That's the original rock.
That
is the side of the cave that was originally here.
And that shows that the burial cave
Yeah.
is much more intact than we thought.
Yeah, it's more like lopping off the top of a soft-boiled egg. They lopped off the top, but at a much higher level than anyone had ever suspected. They cut a window here to actually show the side of the original cave. They're going to put a crystal plate there, but you're actually seeing it without any plate.
In nearly 2,000 years, no one had suspected that parts of the cave could be there. But as restoration work continues, scientists make a less welcome discovery. Deep in the structure of the edicule, water has been seeping up from underground into the walls for years.
We discovered that the rainwater from the Christian street above, 10 meters above Jerusalem street, were draining underneath the Holy Tomb, as well as the sewages of the whole complex were disposed underneath the Holy Tomb.
That rising water has eaten away at the edicule's walls, destroying the mortar and disastrously weakening the structure. Looking to stem the rising tide, the team mapped the tiny watercourses and sewers that riddle the ground beneath the tomb. But this underworld also hides tunnels which aren't a part of the water systems. Tunnels which no one can explain. The restorers have discovered the original walls of the burial cave. Now, there's another revelation, which poses a worrying problem. Water is seeping upwards from underground and slowly destroying the structure. Archaeologist Frederick Hebert goes deep into the entrails of the Holy Sepulchre Church to investigate what lies beneath.
Wow. Look at this tunnel. I was not expecting a well-built ashlar masonry tunnel underneath the tomb of Christ with what looks like a hand-hewn doorway right here. This is completely unexpected. We had expected maybe some water cisterns or some water canalization, because that's typical of Jerusalem. But this is not that, it's dry in here. Then we thought maybe it's part of the old archaeological excavations. But this is no archaeological excavation. This is a well-built tunnel. It's stretching dozens of feet towards the center, towards the tomb of Christ. It's hewn straight out of the bedrock, the same rock that Jesus was placed on 2,000 years ago. We've gone almost 30 feet to get here underground, which means that we must be right underneath the most sacred site of Christianity. You know, a tunnel like this that stretches from an important religious monument, like the Tomb of Christ, it even has a shaft straight up to the floor, leading out. Appears to be some sort of escape tunnel or entry tunnel. This is something completely unknown. It's a magical moment.
Whatever purpose the tunnels once served remains a mystery and gives the restoration team no help in solving their toughest challenge. The edicule's water-damaged and weakened old mortar must be replaced with strong, new cement.
If you can imagine, architectural conservation is usually done by dismantling a building, repointing it, putting new mortar in, and then putting it back together. That wasn't possible.
Nothing can be done which might harm even the smallest stone from this most sacred site in Christendom. All the usual restoration methods are out of the question. It's a significant challenge, and time is running out as the immovable Easter deadline approaches. How can cavities within the walls be filled without taking it apart and rebuilding from scratch?
And we had a couple of moments that were really tense after figuring out where the structure needed to be repaired. Rather than taking it down, the Greek conservators figured out a way to keep the building standing but inject liquid mortar inside. Brilliant.
The team inserts tubes into every crack that they found in the walls. The plan is for liquid cement to be pumped under pressure down each tube. Running through the internal cracks and crevices, the cement should solidify and stabilize the structure. Everything is going well until they realize their brilliant plan has a glitch, a flaw endangering everything they want to achieve.
Some outside observer, maybe it was one of the masons there, said, we really need to open the tomb to put a moisture barrier in so that none of the liquid mortar goes in.
When the team calculate where the liquid mortar might run within the walls, they realize it could flow right down inside and onto the holy bed. It's a critical moment. The tomb has been sealed for hundreds of years, but now it has to be opened. Unless the restoration team gain access to build a dam against the encroaching cement, the holy bed will be damaged. Will the patriarchs from the different controlling groups ever agree to such a thing?
And I thought, well, this is going to be the end of the project, because the guys, the bigwigs, who don't agree on anything, they're going to have to agree on this. Something like, hey, let's open up the innermost shrines. Well, that's not going to happen. Christian pilgrims from all over the world have saved up their savings to go to the Edicule. And the patriarchs did not want to disappoint those pilgrims who are coming here on their once-of-a-lifetime visit to the epicenter of their faith. So that was a rule.
Professor Moropoulou needs unanimous agreement. She deploys all her persuasive skills. Just 5 months before Easter, the patriarchs finally bend their own rule. For 60 hours, and 60 hours only, they will open the Tomb of Christ. Sunrise on the day the Tomb of Christ is to open. For centuries, a marble slab has sealed the tomb. Today, it will be slid aside. A few witnesses will see the rock shelf, the holy bed, the final resting place of Jesus. Among them are National Geographic archaeologist Fred Hebert and correspondent Tim Samuels.
It's an incredible meeting of the top patriarchs of Christianity right here. And it's almost more important than the conservation work. The decision to open the tomb was absolutely, unequivocally a group decision of the patriarchs, who knew that we were all in checkmate if we couldn't inject the liquid mortars with 100% guarantee that the liquid mortar would not cover the holy rock.
For everyone at the Holy Sepulchre Church, this will be a day and a night to remember.
What do you hope you will see?
The rock, the natural rock.
How are you feeling?
We are all emotion to see. What you expected after so many years. All emotion to see what is there.
The atmosphere was very hushed inside. They closed the doors of the church and locked us in. Some 50 of us, plus the monks.
Words come through that it's actually imminent. You know, potentially, this hasn't been touched since the 3rd century. Here we are in the 21st century, in the tomb of Jesus. It's about to be opened, the first time since then.
Δεν έχουμε τελειώσει ακόμα. Λοιπόν, να πάω λίγο εγώ. Ναι. Έλα. Ωραία. Έλα.
The National Geographic team is here to share the experience with a worldwide audience. But it's also an intense personal moment.
I mean, to the untrained eye, it's kind of, it's so hard to grab any meaning from this. And as a man of faith, how do you feel now?
My knees are shaking a little bit because I wasn't expecting this as much on behalf of being a scientist as being a human. So it's truly amazing.
With the top slid aside, witnesses expect to see a bare white rock on which Christ's body once lay. What they see is dust and debris.
What's happened is they've pulled the top of the marble slab back, and what we see underneath is the debris. And to be honest, we don't know what's underneath the debris that you see there.
It was as if we had opened up what was underneath your bed that hadn't been cleaned in the last 2,000 years. It was the slow accumulation. It was the dust of ages. And it was fascinating.
It's essential the debris is cleared to reveal the holy bed below. But the Patriarch's ruling is clear. The tomb can stay open for just 60 hours, and the clock is officially ticking. By the next day, the dust of ages is gone, revealing new secrets of the tomb. Beneath the marble slab now slid aside, there's another, more ancient stone. It's cemented directly onto the holy bed below and engraved with a symbol that no one expected to find.
That was a surprise, you know. When we opened the tomb and we saw the engraved cross, we said this might be a cross of the era of the Crusaders.
Crusader armies controlled the Church of the Holy Sepulchre at various times in its war-torn history.
Jerusalem re-entered Christian hands in 1099, and at that very time a new devotion began to sweep through Europe, something much more emotional, much more affective, much more sense of the pathos of Christ's human life. And it's no coincidence that this matched the time of the Crusades and the resurgent pilgrimages to Christian Jerusalem.
The Crusaders brought with them a symbol adorning their battle tunics, the Crusaders' cross, dating from around 1,000 years after Christ's death. But that date is much too late to match the legend of Constantine discovering the tomb just 300 years or so after Jesus was buried. The discovery of the Crusader cross throws doubt on the whole story of Constantine and the tomb. But there is a plan that could verify the authenticity of this site. Professor Moropoulou's team is going to test the ancient cement that holds the engraved slab to the holy bed. If the cement proves to be from Constantine's era, this fits perfectly with the theory of his discovery. If it's later, then the real tomb of Christ could be elsewhere. This is not the first time that the authenticity of the Holy Sepulchre tomb has been questioned. In the 19th century, Protestant academics claimed that it could not be Christ's tomb because it was inside the city walls. Laws at the time of Christ's death forbade burials within the city. And then in 1867, another tomb was found, this one outside of the city walls.
When you enter into this tomb, you'll see that it's divided into two small chambers. The first chamber would have been primarily used as a preparation site where they would prepare the body for burial, and the inner chamber is the place where bodies were buried.
Known as the Garden Tomb, supporters claimed that it matched gospel stories of the resurrection. John 19, verse 41. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb, in which no one had ever been laid. Near to the tomb itself, there are water channels and cisterns, which in the 19th century were seen as evidence that this could be a garden, as mentioned in the Bible. More importantly, those who promoted the garden tomb pointed to another Bible reading. Mark 15, verse 22. Then they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of a skull. A hill in the shape of a skull can still be found next to the garden tomb. It's altered since this photograph was taken in around 1910, but the shape can faintly be seen.
It's not that picturesque image that people have in their minds when they imagine the crucifixion.
This now lies deep in the city, its neighbor a busy, noisy bus terminal. Perhaps a fitting reminder of where Jesus died.
We know that the crucifixion of Jesus was anything but picturesque. It wasn't this beautiful, reverent sight. Jesus was crucified on the roadside in a public place among the people.
The Garden Tomb is an amazing space. It's got such beauty, and you can really contemplate and think back on how things were in the first century. As a space for contemplation, it is fantastic.
Although she enjoys the peace of the Garden Tomb, Professor Taylor does not think it is a serious rival to the claims of the Holy Sepulchre Church. Archaeologists have dated the Garden Tomb to the Iron Age, around 800 years before Jesus was born.
What we know is that Jesus' tomb was newly cut. This is what the New Testament tells us, that it was a new tomb. So it's very unlikely it was a reused Iron Age tomb.
But what of the sunken eyes of Skull Hill, Golgotha, which first led pilgrims to this site?
This is just a kind of imaginative idea that the hill looks like a skull. If you think back 2,000 years, it would have been completely different at the time of Jesus.
Most academics now accept that the 19th century beliefs about the Garden Tomb were mistaken. And the discovery of the Crusader cross now raises similar questions of beliefs about the tomb inside the Holy Sepulchre Church. Despite those doubts, restoration remains the priority. With the tomb once again sealed, the rest of the work can move forward. The conservator's to-do list is endless. Repair and replace stonework. Remove the old steel support cage. Clean an irreplaceable gallery of murals and frescoes to reveal the original colors and restore their shining beauty. And with time running out, the team transform an ancient chapel of religion to serve the modern needs of science.
I didn't realize that 50 feet away there was a whole 21st century lab. Most of, for archaeologists as well as conservators, most of our work is done in museums. And we're thinking, wow, they've taken the lab, the conservation lab, out of a museum and put it in the church. It showed actually the openness of the patriarchs. It's sort of like allowing a car mechanic to use your living room to fix your car.
Operating laboratories inside of the church is the only way the work can be completed in time. There is much to be done, and Easter is fast approaching. At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the restoration team has finished with just 3 weeks to spare before their Easter deadline. The tomb has been resealed without damage. Liquid cement has straightened the pillars. The ugly steel cage has been taken away, and the dirt of ages past has all been cleaned.
We delivered it intact and preserved, clean, colored, vivid, and a live monument, as it is the tomb of Christ. But the question is, how shall we preserve it with sustainability in the centuries to come?
Professor Moropoulou's caution is understandable. Because the Holy Sepulchre Church lies on an earthquake fault line, scientists use a seismic shaker table to establish the likely effect of future quakes. It proves the restored Edicule is stable for now.
We came up with the proper measures to be taken in order to strengthen it, so in the future it's not gonna be vulnerable to any earthquake.
21st century computer modeling techniques are also helping protect the tomb. Scientists will detect any future changes in the structure by comparing this cyberspace model, created by National Geographic experts, against the reality of the building over years to come.
We used a laser scanner and a technique called photogrammetry, which builds 3D maps from tens of thousands of photographs. If the Edicule were to start to settle into the ground or collapse or be destroyed again, the church has been destroyed many times over the history, naturally by fire and by religious extremists in the past. Were that ever to happen again, we at least have the best digital copy that technology can make right now.
National Geographic's work also means that anyone can now visit the Holy Sepulchre in the form of virtual reality.
You can see all the engraved texts on the side of the walls. You can see the entire conservation and restoration of the Edicule.
Following the success of restoration, such measures are helping future-proof the tomb. But a shadow still hangs over the entire project. The long-held belief has been that Constantine discovered the tomb 300 years after Christ's death. But the Crusader cross on the slab, cemented directly onto the holy bed, dates to around 1,000 years after Christ died. If the later date is accurate, the legend collapses, and with it, the authenticity of Christianity's most sacred site. In Athens, Professor Moropoulou's team spends months analyzing samples from Jerusalem. Their analysis reveals the most important secret of all from the tomb of Christ. The age of the cement securing the cross-engraved slab to the holy bed is confirmed. It dates to around 300 years after Christ's death. The story of Constantine appears to be true. The evidence supports the idea that this is the burial site of his legend. It's an amazing discovery, the crowning glory of this historic restoration. And unless the cross was carved into the stone centuries later, this could be one of the earliest Christian relics ever found.
It is a cross that represented the Christian faith, and the cross of Jerusalem was a symbol of recreating the Christian symbols and bringing them open to the public, to the pilgrims. That was a new era for Christianism, and it's not by chance that it happened in Jerusalem.
The incredible revelation dating the cement to around 300 years after Christ's crucifixion is the strongest evidence yet that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the site discovered by Emperor Constantine. The sacred burial cave and holy bed where he believed Jesus was laid to rest and was resurrected from the dead. The tomb of Christ.